coming from someone who has taken the calculus scholarship exam twice and totally survived it, here are some of my tips for how to survive the NCEA scholarship calculus. If you're watching this video, you probably already know that the scholarship exam is a super duper tough exam, but it doesn't mean it's impossible to achieve. So, the exam is 3 hours long and consists of 4 questions, each with around 3 to 4 small parts. And most of the questions are level 3 stuff but harder and have varying difficulties. Also, to survive the exam you would normally need a mark of 17 out of 32. Also remember, there's always a bit of a wiggle room for that threshold mark, so I would say 19 is a safe mark to get. Anyway, let's get to the tips to survive the exam. Tip number 1, and maybe the most important, stop memorizing stuff you don't get, and I mean it. The exam is not a memory test, but rather a test of your ability to conceptualize ideas well. This is an oversimplified example, but take something like the first principles formula. You need to understand what the numerator means, what the denominator means, and what the limit means. I'm not gonna get too deep into the mathematics, but the idea is that it's the slope as this bit gets smaller. In particular, take something like a question asking to derive the derivative of x cubed. How do you apply this formula? The first step is to apply it such that it becomes something like this. But that's not all. It's also good to anticipate the result you would want from the calculation. If it's asking to derive the derivative of x cubed, then you will surely know the result has to be 3x squared. And if you were to get a different result, then it's crucial to carefully read again to find the mistake until you get the intended result. Therefore, you need to understand the meaning, the application, and if possible, what you expect the result of your calculation to be. Another good example would be the area between two curves. What does this formula even mean? With rote learning, sure, you can probably solve a normal problem like this. But what about this? The goal is to reach a point where you're not just following steps, but you actually understand why you're doing what you're doing. For example, in this question, instead of solving the long way using vertical slices, you can find the inverse function, if possible, then apply the formula to get the horizontal slices in order to get the area. Past papers are your best friends. Like any other exam, there is a certain style and pattern across different years. As you work through various past papers, you will start to identify recurring themes and types of questions. Don't trust me? Here are the proofs. These are questions from 2013, 2015, 2017, and 2022. And they're exactly the same. And even more recently, between 2022 and 2023, these two questions are suspiciously similar. Well, to be fair, in my opinion, the examiners are probably too lazy to come up with new topics. Dear NCEA, please get better. Dear audience, since I'm too lazy to record this audio, please enjoy the script by ChatGPT. It's also important to look beyond the standard level 3 calculus resources. By diversifying your study materials, you can get new perspectives and deepen your understanding. A bit about my background, I actually only studied AP Calculus BC, which is a course offered by the American Advanced Placement Program before taking the NCEA Scholarship Calculus exam for the first time, after which I managed to score 80% on the exam. This was largely thanks to the broader range of concepts in AP for Scholarship Calculus. You can find most of the stuff from AP such as first principles, implicit differentiation, parametric equations, integrals, etc., which you can find on Khan Academy. There are also extended content like Taylor series or infinite sequence, which can occasionally show up in the exam, but not very often. It's still good to have more knowledge though. Oh, another really good source is 3 Blue 1 Brown, which you can watch to conceptualize the idea of calculus. If you're not confident, just go slow and steady to make sure there's no error. Also, always remember to double check even while you're practicing questions. There isn't a magical trick that will help you remove all mistakes, but practice makes perfect. What I did was, for every paper, I would mark it myself and go over each mistake so then I would know which part I would most likely make one again. This is probably a tip only for those who are trying really hard. Some of you may be trying hard and study everything there is in calculus, say volume of revolution, Maclaurin sequence of multivariable integrals. These are rarely going to show up, at least without a bit of extra information which they will give you anyway. Yes, it's good to know them in case it does show up so you're familiar with them, but don't do 100 different questions on these topics because the exam will only give you the most simple questions for such topics. Another thing, there's a good way to find an idea when you get stuck with a problem. Just go over the resource booklet and see what formula applies. This is because 90% of the time, the answer would involve using equations or information in the resource booklet. Trust me, you don't want to restudy everything the night before the exam, otherwise you are doomed. Do 1 integral per day for example, or if you're hardcore maybe do 20 per day. This way you keep reactivating your knowledge. Talking about integrals, do not forget the C. Do not forget the C. Do not forget the C. If your goal is to survive, then don't bother attempting the hard questions first because each big question is worth the same amount. So, just look through the paper first, then identify easy and hard questions. You should aim to finish all easy questions first and then the hard ones. Otherwise, you're only going to waste time trying to solve a really difficult problem, which you may not be able to solve anyway. All the 5-10 minutes you spent for that particular questions are down the drain. Don't get too much adrenaline get to your brain. It's not made for university students. The exam is made for high school students. Yes, it is hard, but they're not meant to test you about some sort of diabolical knowledge in university. So, in the worst case scenario, remember what I said about going over the resource paper? Well, do that!